Hello everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and in this video we're going to be unboxing a board game called Dark Souls, the board game, from Steamforged Games. Now, if you were on Kickstarter in 2016, you definitely heard about Dark Souls, the board game. This game raised over $5 million on Kickstarter that year. It was one of the biggest board game successes of the year, had over 31,000 backers. Now, when the game originally delivered, there were some gripes in terms of some of the grindiness behind Dark Souls. Some liked it. Some liked the difficulty that came with it and the earning that you had to go through to actually get victories. But others thought it was too much of a grindy experience in terms of what it forced you to do. And what I really gravitated towards recently, now being in 2020 here where I'm doing an unboxing, is because the community came around behind Dark Souls once it was released and actually put together an extended rule set which can be found on BoardGameGeek that essentially aims to tie up those loose ends and basically tweak some of those things in the original core set rules that were gripes among critics and also the individuals that received the game. And this really intrigued me that there was enough support and care and love for the product itself that the community rallied around it to try to make it better. So here we are in 2020. How about we go ahead and take a look at the core box experience and do yourself a favor and check out that extended rule set on BoardGameGeek. I really do feel that that actually pushes the game further now than it did when it originally landed. Now let's take a look at the back of the box. As you can see at the very top left-hand corner, it says prepare to die. And if you've played the video game, well, you know those words all too well. And you're certainly going to hear that and experience that as you play through the board game as well, at least inside your own head as you try to survive what this game throws at you. It states up there, to prevent the coming of darkness, a curse has been unleashed upon humanity, and you are the chosen undead, bearers of the curse, and it's upon you that the fate of this world rests. Will you forever join the soul of Cinder and prolong the torment, or usher in an age of humanity where the curse of undeath is at last lifted? Dark Souls, the board game, is a cooperative dungeon crawl board game for 1 to 4 players. To win the game, players must work together tactically to learn how to defeat the enemies before finally confronting the boss. Players will find specific attack patterns and weaknesses of the enemies, but they will have to be careful. If a player's character dies, the game does not end, but starting over comes at a cost. Each time a character falls in combat, the whole party must return to the bonfire and all enemies reset. Use your resources sparingly, learn quickly, and prepare to die. The first thing you're greeted with when you open up the box is those iconic words. The words, "You died." Those of you that have played the video game know these words all too well. Next thing you're going to find inside the box are a bunch of punch boards around the player boards, as well as some tokens. There's some packaging surrounding it. I'm going to remove all that and we'll take a look at each of these pieces. The first of the punch boards inside the box focus on the assassin, as you can see right here, and we've got an area up top here for the backstab. We've also got slots here for multiple cards on the character, as well as tokens along the bottom here. So we have tokens like the bleed condition token, we have terrain type tokens, we also have wound tokens with these skulls across the top, and the aggro token over here. Just to give you an idea is what it looks like on the back side of this token punch board and the character board itself. We've got Dark Souls, the board game here. You'll notice there's punch outs as you're going to be putting cubes on this character board, and they have slots to hold them. The next punch board here has the Herald character. You'll see Perseverance in the top left-hand corner for the Herald. We've also got a different type of token down here in the bottom left. That's the Poison Condition token. There's 5 of those. Some more terrain tokens, as we've already seen. These right here are soul tokens. We've got a 3, a 1, and a 1. Got some more wound tokens. And this one over here in the far right-hand corner is the first activation token. Next up, we have the Knight and the Standfast ability in the top left-hand corner. Here we have the Frostbite condition token, along with a number of tokens we've already talked about. Next is the Warrior, and we've got the Berserk Charge in the top left, Down here, we have the final condition token, and that is the stagger condition, as well as a number of other tokens. That really big one right down here in the bottom right is more souls. It's for 8 of them. The final token punch board here has a bunch of dials you're going to have to assemble for some of the major bosses in the game. We've got the Dancer here, the Dragon Slayer, the Executioner, a number of others here as well to put together. We've also got some tokens down below. These ones right here are the Luck tokens. We have the Heroic Action tokens right here. We have the Ember tokens here, and we have the Etnis Flask tokens right there. These tokens, the large majority at the bottom left here, these are all trap tokens. And then this one right here is the Fog Gate token. Next thing you're going to find inside the box is the rulebook for Dark Souls. We're going to go through a number of these pages so you can get an idea as to how the rulebook is laid out. Contents on the left-hand side here, we have an introduction to the game. We'll continue to flip. We're going to start seeing things like the game contents. This is going to talk about all the different miniatures you're going to run into and the cards that go along with them. Also talking about all the different cards in terms of treasure, encounter decks, the terrain and board elements, everything. We're about to see those tiles in a few seconds. Here are the pages around setup. For the initial setup, how to set up the tiles, the bonfire sparks, the boss selection, encounter cards, treasure decks, characters, and all that good stuff. As I mentioned earlier, I highly recommend, if you are checking out Dark Souls the board game for the first time, go ahead and play the game as it's written here to get an understanding of this rulebook. But the next thing you're going to want to do is head to the BoardGameGeek files section in order to find those extended rule sets that are going to allow for a better play, in my opinion. Those are going to be key in getting the most of this as a solo player. And a lot of it is modular in terms of what you want to use and not use, which is even better. So we're going to continue on here. I think at this point you're probably getting a rough idea as to the flow of the manual itself. It also has artwork throughout. You can hear how new it is as the pages creak open. Talks about the encounter setup here. And it does have some really beautiful artwork that we all remember from the video games as well. So that pretty much sums up the book itself in terms of how many pages this thing is. And should also mention the back has a really, really nice reference here for all the encounter cards, the enemy statistics, enemy movement, attacks, equipment icons, character attacks, other icons, and conditions all laid out here. In total, if you're reading through this book front to back, you're looking at about 38 to 39 pages. It's time to dive into the tiles that come inside the game because you'll predominantly be spending the most time on these tiles. And there are additional tiles you can pick up for Dark Souls the board game if you want to have more variety, but each of these tiles are double-sided. This one right here has the bonfire on it. We'll go ahead and flip it over so you can see the opposite side as well. There you go. Continue on to the next tile, you'll notice that there's a lot of this node movement. You're going to be moving between these circles or nodes on these tiles as you play the game. Very different than more of the squared off area mentality of most dungeon crawlers. And that plays into how you're going to basically try to not only master enemies that you come up against, but in turn also strategize on how you're going to beat them using this system, which is very different. We'll go ahead and flip this over to the other side and you can see totally different artwork over here as well. Moving right along to another set piece for Dark Souls the board game. Flipping this over, yet again, difference. This one looks like it would actually join the other one that we just took a look at for one of the major boss battles. And here we have another one. Again, there's all kinds of different iconography on these boards. We'll talk a lot more about this in future videos, but for what you're seeing here in the unboxing, you're going to see those different icons throughout these tiles. And yes, they definitely have differences and meaning. So if you're familiar with the actual video game itself, which is likely the reason there's likely interest in this particular board game, then a lot of what you're seeing on the tiles here is going to line up with that very dark and gritty world that you're going to be dealing with inside of Dark Souls the board game, and that you're familiar with from the video game as well. So that's a lot of what you're seeing here. That other tile set that you can pick up really does add a lot of variety in different ways than these tiles that are inside the game too. So if you really want to shake things up visually. We'll flip it over to the very last side, and that is going to do it for the tiles, and now we're heading into the major components inside the box. So as you can see here, there is a tray that holds all of the cards. We're going to take a look at this at the end of the unboxing. We'll go through the miniatures first, and then we'll come back around and take a look at all the cards. So the first thing worth mentioning is this is the larger of the two boxes. The first thing you'll see when you pull this out is going to be a large bag of cubes. There are 3 different color cubes inside this bag. The red ones are, there's 32 of them. They're for damage tokens. You've got 32 black stamina tokens, and then you've got 16 white level up tokens. That is what these are going to be used for, and they're primarily put on the actual player boards you saw at the beginning of the video. Now underneath this, we've got the main bosses of Dark Souls, the board game, in the core experience. And when I say main bosses, I also mean mini bosses. Both of them are all represented here. We're going to go through each of them. I'll bring them up close to the camera so you can appreciate them. This is the Gargoyle. This is a mini boss, and I'll give you a nice view of this one from all angles of the miniature. This is one of the larger ones from the set of 6 inside this. Next up we have Boreal Outrider Knight. We'll go ahead and give you a nice twist of this one so you can see it from all angles. Next we have the Titanite Demon. This one is a very interesting pose, coming straight out of the ground. And this 4th miniature rounds out the mini bosses found in the core experience. I'll go ahead and rotate this so you can see it from all angles. And then we're going to check out the 2 main bosses that come inside the game as well. Here's the first of 2 main bosses inside the core box. Go ahead and give you some nice shots around this one as well. Another nice dynamic pose for this one. Again, all these poses, if you're familiar with the video game, they're all going to bring back wonderful haunting memories for you to try and sleep on. The final main boss is Executioner Smough. So we'll go ahead and just turn this one around so you can see it. It's a very big miniature. Definitely has a lot of weight there to the right at the moment. And a lot of cool detail in this one too. Now let's check out the second box inside the core experience. That's this littler one here, but this one comes with the dice. We'll definitely take a look at these close up. Here's a look at 3 of the 4 dice that come inside that dice bag. We got orange here, black, and blue. There are 5 black, 4 blue, and 2 orange. There's also 4 green dodge dice. We'll take a look at those as well. Here's a look at what the dodge dice look like. Again, quality on these is really, really good. As we saw earlier on, you're going to need these in order to put all those dials together. Now let's move on to some of the smaller miniatures inside the core game here. We have the Silver Knight Great Bowman, and there's 3 of them inside the box. I'll spin this around so you can see this one from all angles. There are a couple of these inside the game. These are large hollow soldiers. We'll go ahead and just spin them around so you can see them. Again, another dynamic pose. They're coming right at you. Here we have the Dragon Slayer Ornstein. This one again ties in with the Executioner, which is one of the main bosses that we saw earlier on. Again, those of you that know the video game will definitely know that as well. Lots of detail on this one. Here's a look at one of 2 Sentinels that are inside this box. There are 3 crossbow hollows inside the core experience. Three Silver Knight swordsmen. and 3 regular hollow soldiers. Now let's take a look at the different character minis that are inside the game. This one is for the Herald, the Assassin mini, the Warrior is next. This one's a pretty cool sculpt. I like this one quite a bit. The big battle axe. And finally the Knight. And actually this pose is pretty cool as well. Very cool indeed. Great detail on the shield too. And last but not least, we have this tray of cards to go through, standard size cards as well as some mini cards. Now let's start going through the standard size cards in the game. There's a number of them here. I'll talk about them quickly, but really these are called or referred to as data cards inside the rulebook. Really they're AI cards or behavior cards is really what they're referenced as. And they do state them as behavior cards as you're going to try to learn the behavior of each of these miniatures in order to try to take them down just like the real Dark Souls game. They're going to throw things at you that you're going to become familiar with the more you play them and try to find their weaknesses and use them to your advantage in order to win. So you're going to see all kinds of iconography around these cards. I'm not going to explain all of them here because I would lose a lot of people and spend a lot of time on each of them as they're all varying in terms of what they do. But I will give you a quick overview. You'll also see the titles of each of these relate very much to the type of main boss or mini boss that you're going up against. And a lot of these will be familiar to those who played the video game because, well, we all suffered from a few of them, if not all of them. So we're going to keep on moving through here, and near the end of this particular deck of standard size cards, if I remember correctly, when I was taking a quick peek, it looked as though, yes, there were some cards that represent the actual miniatures themselves. This is like their card itself. You call them kind of like the boss data card, I guess. So we got the Hollow Soldier, the Crossbow Hollow, the Large Hollow Soldier, the Silver Knight Swordsman, Silver Knight Great Bowman, and the Sentinel. Now time for the next pack of cards. This is just simply an English card, has no other purpose. And we're gonna get right into the cards that talk about some of the mini and major bosses or main bosses in the game. So we got the Dancer here, the Dragon Slayer, Executioner. Sorry about my thumb again, covering up some important information there. Gargoyle, Demon, Knight, and then we get into some more cards around behavior. Now we're diving into the mini cards. There are a whole bunch of different types in here. I'll just cycle through so you can see the different backs. See, they change up as you go along. Now I'm not going to explain which each one of these relate to. I'll go through them. There are really a lot of different items inside here. So let's go ahead and flip it over. And we'll take a look. Again, if you're familiar with the video game, a lot of these are going to hit home for you big time, and the iconography on these cards may not. And that's okay. You can check out the actual rulebook in order to get an idea as to what all this means. I'm not going to explain it here, but you can just for now appreciate the artwork for the different weapons, as well as the titles themselves, and hopefully you'll recognize some of these if you've played the game. Let's go through the next deck of mini cards for the game. More weapons, spears and swords, all kinds of different options here. We have another one of these English mini cards we can just dispose of and go through some more. Got some heals in here, some magic weapons, some shards, gems, bunch of them. Got the embers. Some pretty cool looking armor, I gotta say. A lot of this stuff brings back a lot of wonderful memories. These next cards here are all about the encounter deck. You'll be using these ones on tiles as you play through the game, so they'll make a lot more sense when you actually play the game and understand it. But for now, I'll still show you these. There's also some item cards and things like that mixed in with this last deck of mini cards as well. Ooh, just a couple. Just a couple. The Great Axe and the Short Sword. And that's going to conclude the unboxing for Dark Souls, the board game. I really hope this gives you an in-depth look at all the components you can find inside the core experience. Again, remember you'll want to check out the rulebook as well as extended rule set, which is available on BoardGameGeek, and also check out the insane amount of expansions available, some of which are Kickstarter exclusive, but most of them went through retail, and there's still a couple more to come. Thanks again for watching, and as always, keep on rolling solo.